biggest thing is just the weather, you know, because if we wait too long, it gets icy up here and we can't get on the roof. Usually you test the lights before you put them up, but I'm a firm believer in all my lights still work. So, but yeah, it looks nice before the computer, and then all the wires come together, and luckily nighttime hides all the wires. Yeah, so most props have 2 wires. You got a data input. So this is the data input, this 3 pin. This is a power, extra power, because that's 2 pin. So we run 5-volt RGB pixels, and the biggest issue with the pixels is the distance of the wire. So as the wire distance gets further and further and further, you get a voltage drop. So you start at 5 volts here, and then, you know, we're only going, what was that, maybe 12 feet? But at the end of 12 feet, we probably have 3.5 volts. You put these pixels on full color or full white at full brightness, it almost looks like a rainbow. It'll start white on where the first power goes into it, and then it'll basically fade to yellow because the last pixels don't have the same amount of power. So long story short, we basically run additional power to all these props, so the color continues to be seamless across all the props. So on that window right there, that little dongle hanging down, that'll be where we inject power. We have 3 props right here. We have our gutter, and then we have window 1 and window 2. But from a data perspective or from a wiring perspective, these are all actually daisy chains. So we have the gutter feeds window 2 feeds window 1. On paper, you have 13 million different color options. These pixels, I mean, if I showed you 255 versus 254, you probably couldn't really tell. But on paper, that's how it works.
Okay.
You know, realistically, we probably have a 10,000 color visual color palette. But then on that color palette, then you can have brightnesses. So you can basically have red being bright, blue be dim, which gives you kind of a different kind of effect as well. So we map the whole house, and then that becomes almost like a TV screen. So we can basically say, hey, this is the left side, this is the right side, this is the top, this is the bottom. And then basically what ends up happening is as the show is running, even if the lights are just static, what actually is happening, we can't see with the human eye, is these lights are actually turning on and off, you know, between 30 and 60 times a second, depending upon what we actually say. So what we perceive as motion across the house is literally just these lights turning on for not even a tenth of a second, but 1/30th of a second, turning off. Another frame is actually laid on top of the house, and the pixel might shift one direction to left or right or up and down. But you do that 30, 60 times a second, it literally looks like motion, and looks like you have chases and these fades. So if you want to get even crazier, which we do here as well, the props aren't laid out. We actually run props, you know, so we'll run props literally through this walkway here. So they're not set up yet, but props that go from here all the way out to the end of where that walkway ends, and then it will split off and it will go both sides of the driveway. So it's really a pretty cool effect because now you actually can go up, down, left, right, and forwards and backwards. So you have this lot of depth that you can put on your shows to where, you know, the crescendos and the beats can literally look like they're alive and they're moving to the house, and it's a pretty cool effect. Before I used plastic clips and things would get brittle over the off season. Now here, most of these props are all magnetic. So, you know, setup instead of taking hours takes, I hate to say seconds, but it literally just takes seconds. So
yeah,
this is a piece of steel that's screwed to the house. This is the magnet. We're done. So there's a lot of ways to do the controllers on houses for RGB pixels. You can do a hardwired setup. You can do a Wi-Fi Ethernet setup. A lot of options. When you start to get into kind of wider properties, bigger properties, I believe the Wi-Fi approach is a better way. People who are watching this video who are actually in this space will have a whole discussion on this, but there's multiple ways to skin a cat. Here we use a Wi-Fi setup. So outside we have our own personal access point just for the show. So we run a Ubiquity network here. This is a specific access point that is only for all the Christmas lights outside. That access point basically will talk to one of the 7 controllers. This is my Not the prettiest controller box I have here. This is one I use for the center part of the house, so we call this the entrance. So I have a left part of the house, I have a center part of the house, which we're working on right now, and then I have a right part of the house over here. So those all have separate controllers, their own boxes. It's a lot easier to have, I think, a distributed network where instead of having a controller right here and a mega tree 95 feet away and running 16 cords over there, I would rather run one extension cord over to that part of the property and have a computer right there with very short data runs and power runs. So again, you run your extension cord out there, you have a computer, that computer powers your props. That's the mentality that we use here successfully, and we use Wi-Fi as well. So
good.
We'll have these 3 controllers on the house. We'll have one controller back here. So here's where we put our mini trees and our candy canes. One data run here. We'll use one data run for the right side of the walkway, one data run for the left side of the walkway, one data run for around the lawn, another one for this way, and that will basically take care of that computer. We have our main computer, we call the play computer, that will kind of go over in this rocky area. That will be where we put up the 16-foot mega tree. So we run a 16-foot mega tree. It's got 16 strands. Each strand contains 200 pixels.
Wow. We
do that on a 1-inch spacing. Most of the house and all the props up here are a 2-inch spacing, which look really well. But as you start to get closer and closer to your crowd, you actually can just notice differences, right? It looks more pixelated and stuff like that. So because the mega tree is so close to the streets, we have that as a kind of a higher density or 1-inch spacing. The pixels are all weatherproof already, so they're all encapsulated in a, not hot glue, but essentially a very hot glue epoxy. Most of these boxes are weatherproof to a point. You know, if you start looking at how the box is, it has a little lip here. That lip sits inside of here, and any kind of water that runs on top of this, in theory, should spill over the side, so it shouldn't really go inside. The ones under the house or under the soffits, so they're pretty well protected. The mega tree, because it is super exposed, is on a weather. It's literally waterproof, so it can be submerged in water. This box right here probably contains, I'll say $300 electronics, so not too much, but again, we run 7 of these, so 6 of them are the exact same layout, and then the mega tree one is a far different controller because of how many pixels it's driving with that mega tree. Then you have the FM transmitter on top of that. So that mega tree controller is probably $550 if I had to take a guess. Nothing wrong with the small house at all. I had a small house. They're actually great because there's less to store, easier to set up, and if you do it correctly, you have some kind of vertical and wide, you know, windows and gutters, they're actually really fun to look at. You get to a situation like this where you have these big, massive properties. You want to be further back, but you can't be further back because my neighbor is there. So you have so much going on, you literally have to like move your head back and forth as the show's playing. So I think there's definitely, this might be too big for how close you are to the house. But yeah, small houses, you can get away with a simple $300 controller, maybe a couple thousand pixels. So figure about 10 to 20 cents a pixel to kind of get started. Everything is very specific. You know, we're not just taking a string and kind of just hoping that it lays across the house in an even fashion. So these are all put in either PVC pipe or metal J-channel, depending upon where the prop lives. Again, when we have a 3-dimensional space with these pixels and you start doing transitions, fades, up and down, left to right, if your pixel spacing isn't uniform, it looks weird. You know, you'll go through a situation where it'll look like it's speeding up over here or slowing down over here because your pixel spacing is either closer together or further apart. So again, the house we use 2-inch spacing, and if I say, hey, start here and go over here in 12 seconds, from an eye perspective, it's going to be absolutely perfect. It's going to be seamless. So it becomes a lot more visually appealing. I'm not saying for your first time building a house, don't do that. Hey, getting pixels on the house, getting experience, having fun is far more far more important than actually saying, hey, I got to drill this and do that. Get them laid out, see if you like it. If you like it, then you can start to get crazy. But yeah, I'd love to see more simple houses around. You know, we love driving around using the Morell Christmas Lights apps and following the routes and looking at different houses. It's what makes Christmas time for us super fun. There is a lot of, I hate to say copying, right? There's only so many people who make props, so you're limited with what is out there. To me, it's really how people use songs to express emotions over their house, which sounds crazy to say. That's a weird statement, but like, you can take one song and put it on 3 different houses, depending upon how it's actually sequenced, and it will be a complete different experience. So here, if you come and watch our show, we do have a couple, I'll call them slower songs. You know, my wife loves Mariah Carey's Christmas song, so that has to be there every year. But I like a little more upbeats, you know. So this year we have some new songs I think no one's ever sequenced before. So
cool.
You know, that's one thing I kind of try to take pride on, is everyone will copy each other, very kind of, you know, standardized songs for Christmas lights. I like to kind of say, hey, this isn't really a Christmas song that you would hear for a light show, but like, let's see how we can make it work. So yeah, this year we got 3 different songs I've never seen sequenced before, and super excited to see the feedback on them. So yeah, I think next I'll just hang this guy up here. We'll plug it in. I'll need my laptop to identify which ports. Because again, if you do it nicely, you'll have everything labeled. Hey, this is port 1, this is port 2. These are just a mess. Turn on the left window. Great, okay, left window goes on. So we know the left window is in the correct port. And then we can say, hey, change it from red to green to blue.
Rob works hard to get his show set up each year. For most decorators, planning takes several months. This includes time spent sequencing songs on the computer, sourcing new or replacement parts, and of course, actually setting up the equipment on the property. Rob will loosely mount the equipment and hook it up first to test things and make sure things power on properly. After making sure everything works well, he'll then try to tidy up things a little bit more and make sure things are more secure. Rob has power outlets under his soffit to help expedite the process.
I got these little actual Christmas light outlets that we use. Plug that guy in. We got some lights, so it's powering on. So because we have this controller here controlling the whole front of the house, we have props on both sides of the walkway. You could go across on the bottom, which I have one prop I do that, or you can go across on the top. They get cleaned up later, they're just put up for now. But now we'll fire up the laptop, we'll get into the controller box and figure out which thing plugs into which port, because again, if we're working with a 3-dimensional space and we tell the computer in the software that this controller port 1 is the gutter and then the windows, and we plug in the star, well, if you try to fade something left to right on the software, you're going to be upset because your star lights up. So the way the controller's laid out, all the top ports are odd, and all the bottom ports are even, so it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's top 1 in the back right corner is the port I want. So it's this guy right here, which is this wire, which is this pigtail. So we'll do our same test. RGB. Okay. Test. The star. Yeah.
Very nice.
Red, green, blue. Again, so when you start having a bunch of controllers, you're going to want to label them all differently. If you have everything labeled controller and you have a problem and it's raining or it's dark outside or cold, you don't want to go outside and figure out which controller it is. So I have the IP address written on each one of them, and then in the software basis, you can basically label it. So this is called the entranceway. So we got entrance here. So basically this is the controller. It's basically waiting for a command, because again, it's a remote controller Our Mega Tree is actually the one that plays the show, tells all these computers what to do, when to do it, and what we're playing. So right now it's literally just sitting there listening. Say every 100 milliseconds it's saying, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Over and over again. And it's not doing anything at all. So we're gonna go in here and look at it from like a output perspective and figure out what we got going on. Let's do the first window. Window 1. And we're going to tell it to do a red, green, blue pattern.
Is this the window on the left?
This would be the window on the left in theory.
In theory. Oh, good.
So now what's happening here is we're putting in data on this first pixel. We're telling that first pixel, don't do anything. Just sit there, pretty, wait for your turn to go on. And that's basically happening 30 times a second, technically 40 times a second right now, until we get to the right pixels we actually want to turn on. So now you can tell, we're telling it right now to turn these pixels on in a red, green, blue order. So you can see, blue, we go back to red, green, blue. So usually what I do here is exactly what I'm doing. I'm looking right here to make sure all the pixels are actually changing the color.
Looks like they are.
So this is a perfect prop.
Rob has what's called a matrix, which is almost like a TV screen or a scoreboard, which he uses for his Tune 2 sign.
This is behind the matrix. So a lot of people use the matrices for movies, videos. My eyes are usually physically drawn to that. I'm drawn to that part of the house. I almost just end up watching a movie on the guy's house, which is cool. I mean, it's definitely cool, but if they're doing transitions, fades, different kind of effects to the house, I feel like I miss it because I'm staring at the video. So that's just my personal belief. So we'll never have video playing out here. That being said, we use this matrix here specifically for our Tune 2 sign. So we'll say, Tune 2 radio station, and then it'll say, Mariah Carey, or whoever we're doing. So we can turn that on just to kind of show what that looks like. But yeah, from a behind the scenes perspective, so this is a P5 matrix, which just means that the actual LEDs are 5 millimeters apart. So if it's a P10 matrix, which is pretty common, the pixels are further apart, so kind of, again, lower resolution. One power supply, and I think we have 12 actual little boards. So, and again, similar computer. It's not a Raspberry Pi, it's a BeagleBone Black. A little more powerful than the Raspberries.
Rob continues to set up his display, which includes more trees, candy canes, and other special props in the yard. He also shows off a new feature he added this year with his new house numbers, which he can actually control the color of. It's pretty neat. His house will be hard to miss. I bet the DoorDash drivers will love it just as much as the Christmas light watchers. Rob's light show, Morell Christmas Lights, will be up and running this season. Make sure to check it out, just off Beacon Light in Eagle. Thanks, Rob, for giving us a behind-the-scenes tour of your house.